Hello, lovely friend. I am Dr. Mary Barson.
And I'm Dr. Lucy Burns.
We are doctors
and weight management and metabolic health experts.
And this is the Real Health and Weight Loss Podcast. Hello, lovely friend, and welcome to this episode of the Real Health and Weight Loss Podcast. I am Dr. Mary Barson, and today I am joined by our very special guest, Dr. Paul Froomes, gastroenterologist extraordinaire from Melbourne and expert in microbiome health and microbiome-based medicine. This podcast is a continuation from last week. So much goodness in here that we have decided to extend the conversation and keep going.
The gut microbiome doesn't cause obesity on its own. Poor diet is kind of what triggers it and starts it all off and then keeps it going.
It sounds like it becomes then a vicious cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
The poor diet triggers the gut dysbiosis. The dysbiosis continues to trigger the insulin resistance, the increased hunger, the increased cravings. And so we are big proponents of metabolic health. And so at Real Life Medicine, our pillars of good metabolic health is the food, sustenance, stress management, sleep, sunlight, circadian rhythms, movement, strength training, social connection, all really just foundational lifestyle pillars that when we can work on these and get them in a good balance, our bodies are going to be in a good balance as well.
Absolutely.
Also, most of our clients are beautiful people who do our courses have got insulin resistance. It's very common. And so we also recommend reducing processed foods first, absolutely, but also keeping your sugar and starch intake lower while still feeding your gut microbiome with a good amount of natural fibres and plant-based foods. But being in this world, we do rub shoulders with the broader low-carb community. And in the low-carb community, there are pockets that are strong supporters of a carnivore diet. Real food, yes, which is good, not processed food, which is good, but also food that has got no plant fibres in it, essentially. And it seems that many people who choose this diet, it often starts out as perhaps a bit of an elimination diet. Perhaps people with autoimmune illnesses, they go this way and perhaps could be useful in the short term. But then there are people who choose this long term. And what I fear that there is a real dearth, a real lack of understanding about what this could do to our gut microbiome long term and to our health long term. And I would love to get your input on that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting discussion because I, like you, see a lot of that too, because when people come to me, they've usually seen a few GPs, naturopaths, they've seen multiple gastroenterologists, and they've done diet stacking. And in the end, they're either totally confused or they're on an elimination diet or they're on the carnivore diet. And that's the only thing that's given them some relief. Now, so you like me have seen many people that feel, actually, some of my gut symptoms, I'm getting some relief here on a carnivore diet. Essentially, as you said, it's a zero or very low carbohydrate diet. And it's understandable that it might improve some symptoms in the gut because essentially you're reducing all the potentially fermentable fibers or substrates. So bloating always improves on it, and distension, pain, and therefore toxin production because you're not feeding your microbiome, but you're also not feeding the dysbiotic bacteria. And yes, okay, so you can see some symptom relief. There's the occasional person I think is probably okay on it long term, but that's probably genetic. They probably inherited some genes from early humans that literally lived. I mean, there are communities now that just live on yak meat. They don't see a vegetable at all. But for the vast majority of humans, your microbiome is so important to physical, mental, and gut health that the carnivore diet is unfortunately kind of grossly missing something. And what that's missing is some fermentable fibers, because that is what is critical to biodiversity, so a rich population of good probiotic bacteria in the gut, and biomass, meaning enough microbes in the gut to convey all these health benefits for immune function, nervous system function, muscle function, heart function, brain function. So what the key problem, as you know already, with the carnivore diet or these very, very low carb diets is that you're just not feeding a microbiome. You're going to have a weak microbiome. You're going to have a less biodiversity, less biomass, which means less butyrate production, which is not going to be good for your long-term overall health. You're going to miss out on so many nutrients potentially that support, intestinal mucosal integrity. And there's always a risk the carnitine from meat that might be, if you've got dysbiosis, then produce this compound called TMAO, which has been shown to cause deposition of coronary artery fat or plaques, coronary artery disease. So I'm not a big proponent of the carnivore diet. It's okay to use it short term, but the key to getting people eating some plant-based fibers and healthy foods, again, is correcting their dysbiosis. I mean, our microbiome evolved alongside, plant intake. We would hunt and gather. And what we're gathering is carbohydrates, tubers, leaves that we could eat because there wasn't always ready protein sources. It took time to catch them. So completely removing fiber or fermentable prebiotics, we call them, really narrows down that gut ecosystem. So you're going to miss out on a lot of health benefits. So for me, I would always, what I do with people with carnivore diet is correct their dysbiosis and then slowly but surely bring back in a more balanced diet by bringing the plant fibers back in according to their level of tolerance, but we can usually get everyone there.
Yes.
So I agree, it's resilience and it's balance rather than restriction.
Yeah. And that resilience and that balance can be restored. See, what I'm hearing here is you've seen people that perhaps they had gut dysbiosis, they had symptoms, they weren't tolerating different foods, perhaps different plant foods, and they went carnivore, they got some relief, but then you helped improve their integrity, their gut resilience, their gut microbiome, and now they're back at a state where they can feed their probiome as well.
Exactly right.
Yes. No, that sounds like a very, very, a very balanced way to view it. I would like to just go back a little bit to, she called the xenobiosis, the xenobiotics, the toxins.
Xenobiotics, which simply refers to the chemicals that have been allowed to be added to our food.
Could you elaborate more about xenobiotics and the dangers of a processed diet to everything, but specifically to our gut microbiome?
Well, the problem is that these chemicals, and there's over 120 of them or plus now, some of which are known carcinogens, some are known poisons that you would never dream of giving to a human to eat. But in microdoses, do lots of wonderful things to food to make it have great mouthfeel or emulsify it so that the ingredients don't separate out. And so taste, flavor enhancement. And the other key thing you get from these xenobiotics or chemicals is that you get flavor and preservation. So you can let it sit on a shelf literally for years. Shelf life, right? So these chemicals are dangerous because, well, they do a couple of things. Essentially, they act like sort of antiseptics or antibiotics. So they kill off probiotic bacteria. They can't tolerate them. Second is they can damage the epithelial cells of the gut and also damage what are called tight junctions. So your gut lining is only one cell thick, double layer of mucus and some secretory IJ in the middle. But these cells control what is allowed into your bloodstream. And they have these linkages between them called tight junctions. And when you eat certain chemicals like emulsifiers, it disrupts the mucus barrier and then you get tight junction dysfunctional breakage, if you like. And the cells lining your gut, the gaps open up. And so then chemicals, partially digested foods, and also toxic metabolic byproducts of dysbiotic bacteria, they can get into your bloodstream. So this is where the inflammation and insulin resistance and disease process starts to get nasty. And it's driven a lot by these chemicals. So you're wiping out your microbiome diversity, you're wiping out your microbiome mass, you're damaging your gut lining, and then you're creating gut inflammation and then setting yourself up for disease. So I'm very, very, like you, a very big proponent of a chemical or preservative or xenobiotic processed food free diet. natural eating is kind of what I call it.
Yes. It can be a difficult step for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
But it is one of the most powerful steps that you can take towards good health. Yes, to divorce ourselves from this big scientific experiment that has been conducted on us for decades without our consent.
Yeah. We're one of the last countries to ban 2025, we banned paraquat, which is the most poisonous chemical on the planet.
Right.
That was being used to kill bugs in farming.
But finding its way into our food system.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. What advice would you give to people out there? So many of our listeners would be identifying with this. So many people have got irritable bowel and other functional gut disorders and may perhaps have felt a bit dismissed by the medical community in the past. What advice would you give to people listening who want to take steps to start repairing their microbiome and start repairing their health?
Well, so you, like me, obviously seeing a lot of people struggling with gut problems and like bloating, pain, altered bowel habit, food intolerances, it's brain fog. It literally is. It drives them to crazy. And they're, as you said, often dismissed. I find most patients have been dismissed and their symptoms not validated, and they're just told they're stress heads. Go on a FODMAP diet and go away. But look, sensible first steps would be make sure there's nothing serious wrong. So exclude your red flags. If you've got weight loss, rectal bleeding, anemia, go get your colonoscopy scopes done. Exclude anything nasty. So you've got to go through that process. I think that's very important. You're not going to miss Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, cancers, ulcers, etc., etc. Structurally, make sure you are okay. Then the first step is just simplify the diet. Remove ultra-processed foods. Start eating some plant-based foods. Grass-fed beef, line-caught fish are good protein sources. Get good fat sources into you. So things like medium-chain triglycerides, coconut oil, pure olive oil, avocado, etc., etc. And gently introduce soluble fibers. So don't go for the really heavy, fiber-rich, insoluble fiber-type foods, all the beans and legumes, and necessarily first start off gentle by just bringing it in. So eat a bit more the green leafies and just bring a bit of fiber gently into your diet. But then the next step would be, okay, well, that's just a good, sensible thing to start with. But then I'd probably say, right, let's go assess your stool pattern. So let's go and test your microbiome and just see where you're at. We can then diagnose your dysbiosis so that we can then start using intervention to change you in a more structured and more significant way so that you become asymptomatic. You don't have these symptoms anymore. In fact, what you've had for 10, 20 years is gone. That's very exciting to go into that space.
Yes, absolutely. Could you tell us more about microbiome testing? Because I'm sure many of our listeners would be interested about, what's a good way to go about it, because I'm sure there are some bad ways as well.
Well, look, for my purposes, I try and keep it simple. I've designed a microbiome mapping test that suits my purposes because I'm interested in the bacteria and knowing what they've got. I want to know what the bacteria are that are causing the problem and which probiotics are missing. So essentially it's a microbiome stool test done on a fresh stool sample, and it's sent into the laboratory where they use the high throughput or shotgun sequencing DNA technology, which basically it then gives you a nice readout of pathogenic bacteria. So that's bacteria that are clearly linked to gut dysfunction and symptoms and illness. Then there's what are called opportunistic pathogens. So these are sort of in between. They're not pathogens, but they're bacteria that if they get into an overgrowth situation, then you've got dysbiosis. So these are bacteria just waiting to cause trouble. And then we look at yeasts, viruses, parasites, and then we look at all a large number of probiotics to see what you're missing. So that allows me to target, okay, there's your culprit bacteria and there's your missing probiotics. And the names of the bacteria are not that relevant to your patients. They will never have heard of them. But they're helpful for us because we can deduce quite a bit about which particular bacteria causes which symptom, which is likely to cause diarrhea, which is likely to cause constipation, which toxin is made by which bacteria. So it's helpful for the clinician in explaining the symptoms away and then targeting those. Then okay, just how intensively or what you need to do in terms of probiotic restoration you need to do following treating or eradicating the dysbiotic bacteria. So there's a lot of different stool tests out there. The normal stool PCR, which is the one your GP will give you, by most GPs will start with, is not enough. You need to go and sequence the microbiome and get a readout of all the species that are available to look at. It's no stool microbiome test is fully complete because there's probably 400 to 600 different species, but no one does that. But you can certainly look at the ones that make up the majority of the microbiome. Honestly, it's useful. It helps, and when you target them, you get a better result. So that's how I look at it. I use a particular lab at the moment, but that may change depending on what comes out in the future. But I keep it simple because the patients, what does that mean? Prevotellocopra, what's that? I just say you explain it as bad bacteria that make toxins that cause the damage and the symptoms and stop your gut functioning, and you're missing the probiotics. And some patients have heard of bifidobacterium or lactobacillus, and you can mention those and tell them these are what are going to make everything work properly. If we can biohack it, you have a probiotic microbiome, your gut works normally again. And they're absolutely staggered at hearing that usually.
Yes.
And then when you do it, it's even more exciting.
Yes, for everyone. And I love that your emphasis is on their understanding and not making you feel smart. That's very good.
Yeah, well, you don't want to confuse your patients. They've had enough. They're confused enough already.
Yes.
By searching the internet themselves, getting different diets from different people, and being told it's all in their head, they're usually very confused and pretty disappointed.
Yes, confused and disillusioned. Yes.
Their journey thus far.
Yes. So we have talked about food as one of the most significant ways that you can shift your gut microbiome for good or for bad. What other factors are important?
So in a general way, lifestyle is very important. So chronic stress, which we call distress, because there's eustress, which is enough to get you going and get you doing things. But when you're exposed to too much stress, excess stress, chronic stress, cortisol releasing peptides up, cortisol's up, adrenaline's up. That's been proven to alter the gut microbiome, as well as gut permeability and motility. So in terms of lifestyle, yes, diet, but then stress, managing that, and learning to do things in your life that balance or counteract stress. So list all your stresses on one side and list all the fun things on the other side that balance it out. And usually everyone's stress list is 3 times longer than their nurturing list. So getting that right is a big help. Sleep, as you mentioned, is terribly important for metabolism and also for your gut microbiome, which also has a diurnal rhythm. So sleep, wake cycle, getting that balanced is very important for your microbiome. Also, getting out into nature. So there are microbes everywhere in nature. So getting out into the ocean, for example, it's literally teeming with microbes. Getting out and go for a walk in nature, just plants are shedding microbes, the soil's shedding microbes, all of which we're supposed to pick up. We have contact with other people. We're essentially, humans are surrounded. It's not just internal in the gut where the microbiome is, but it's in the mouth, the skin, eyes, everywhere. We're kind of surrounded by a cloud of microbes. It's about probably 50 centimeters in diameter, but varies in people's richness. And also, so you will share microbes with other people, and hopefully some good ones, but unfortunately in the West it's often bad ones. But that's another way of nurturing your microbiome. Having a pet, as you've probably heard, you will share microbes with your pet, and people with pets have increased biodiversity compared to people who don't. So they're kind of a few lifestyle things. Getting out and exercising. Exercising improves motility and biodiversity as well. So there's diet mixed with a whole lot of other lifestyle things that they all play a role in both human health, but also in microbial mass, gut microbial mass and biodiversity.
I love that. a bushwalk can be a probiotic activity. That is
absolutely, it can.
Fabulous. I love that so much.
And swimming in the ocean.
Yes, I love that too. Oh, so good. Thank you so much, Dr. Paul Froomes. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I am sure a really, really helpful one as well for our listeners. If our listeners wanted to find you and to find out more about you, where could they go?
So 2 places they can find me. So we have a website called themicrobiomeclinic.com.au, and that's where people can literally book in and book a video consult. There's also people who want to come and see me in person. There's drpaulfroomes.com.au, and also you can just follow the Instagram link at the Microbiome Clinic.
Fantastic. And we'll have all of those links in our show notes.
And get a few little takeaways each day.
Yes, excellent, which is where I had already known you as a fabulous gastroenterologist. I'd heard of you, but it was seeing one of your Instagram posts that particularly piqued our interest as wanting to get you on as a guest.
Oh, great. Well, it's great to be on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Your knowledge and expertise is so extremely helpful, and thank you for your great work. I think I'd love to have you as a guest again in the not too distant future.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
The information shared on the Real Health and Weight Loss podcast, including show notes and links, provides general information only. It is not a substitute, nor is it intended to provide individualised medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor can it be construed as such. Please consult your doctor for any medical concerns.